Good evening, welcome to the Evening Review. Next up, let's have a look at the headlines. Good evening, my name is Jemima Beekers, your host this evening. We are speaking to Zimbabwean award-winning journalist Hopewell Chin'ono, who was recently arrested and imprisoned for his reporting about corruption in that country. Thank you for joining us, Hopewell.
Thank you very much for having me on the program.
Now, Hopewell, you've been in prison for some weeks now. Can you talk to us about that experience?
Well, I've been in prison for 45 days. I was arrested on the 20th of July. The charge that they put in front of me in court was that I was inciting violence, but I never incited violence. I had reported exposing the corruption that was taking place in Zimbabwe, in the government, where they were setting up shelf companies and they were looting money that was meant for COVID-19. The looting of the funds involved so many countries, including Namibia, and indeed your media house covered the story. And I was told that I had reported on the president and I had tarnished the name of the president, and I was told that I had tarnished the family name of the president because it involved his son, his wife, and his high-ranking officials. And I was arrested. I was denied bail 3 times, so I spent 45 days in prison, and then I was eventually given bail first week of September.
Now, Hopewell, what in your view are the repercussions and implications that your arrest may have for media in Zimbabwe or in the region and the society in Zimbabwe at large?
I think the implication for Zimbabwean journalists is that we do not have freedom of speech. When you speak, you are not given the guarantee that you will still be free, as seen in my case. Our constitution guarantees us the freedom of speech, and the press is got freedoms that are enshrined in the constitution. But what it simply means is that our government, the Emmerson government, is not respecting the constitution. I was accused of inciting violence, something that I never did. They used 4 tweets, which they took from Twitter. They don't talk about violence at all. I think within the region, what it tells countries like yours, like Namibia, is that you've got to guard jealously the freedom of the press, because if you have a dictator who does not respect the constitution, they can come after journalists and arrest them. But thankfully, in countries like Namibia, you still have the freedom to do your work without worrying whether you will still have freedom after you've done it.
Now, Hopewell, how has this experience affected your personal life, your family, those people around you? And then you were speaking about press freedom. and anti-corruption. There were also a number of protests in that country. So how is this impacting the daily lives of people in Zimbabwe? People see you as someone standing up for their rights. How are they seeing your arrest now?
I think a lot of people were worried when I was arrested. It's seen by the international solidarity that was given to me, and my colleague Jacob Ngarivumo was also arrested with me. Personally, it showed me that the government in Zimbabwe is behaving like a rogue state, is behaving like a dictatorship, and it is indeed a dictatorship. Personally, I was not moved or affected in the way that they would have wanted me to be affected, because I've always known that this is a dictatorship. We were hoping that after Robert Mugabe things would change, but things haven't changed. My family was affected because, you know, they are not journalists, so they are not mentally prepared for this kind of occurrence. So they were obviously affected. But I've always told them that, you know, these sort of things happen, especially in countries like Zimbabwe, where the rule of law is abused, it's not followed. So it's something that worries citizens today, that if a journalist of my prominence can just be locked up for 45 days without trial, what about the young journalists? So the idea is to instill fear in these young journalists, to say, look at big journalist, he reported about the president and the corruption that was taking place in government. If you do it, we'll throw you into prison.
Now, Hopewell, President Emmerson Mnangagwa came to power with much promise. Do you feel that his reign so far has changed things in Zimbabwe for the better, for the ordinary Zimbabwean?
I think his reign so far has changed things for the worse. We never thought that there would come a time when we would say that Robert Mugabe was better than someone else, but we are now living through those times where Zimbabwean citizens, ordinary citizens, are now saying that Mugabe was better than Emmerson Mnangagwa. This regime of Mnangagwa, it's rooted in plundering of national resources. It's rooted in looting of public funds. It's rooted in serious corruption. And whilst this is happening, our hospitals do not have medicines. All government hospitals have not been working for the past 3 months. Nurses have been on strike for the past 3 months. This has been caused by the looting of public funds. The money that is meant for hospitals is now taken and put into private bank accounts. It buys mansions, it buys expensive cars, whilst the ordinary citizens are suffering. The biggest hospital in Zimbabwe is called Harare Hospital. It has only 2 maternity theaters, which were built in 1977 by the colonial government. Only one of them is working. And 2,000 Zimbabwean women die every year giving birth. And yet, just one Land Cruiser could build a theater for women in Zimbabwe who are giving birth. But it's not happening. Our women are dying. Whilst I was in prison, 8 women died on one day at the biggest hospital in Zimbabwe. But the government does not care. So when we put out this information as journalists to say this money was stolen, we are trying to show the citizens, and indeed the leaders, that what you are doing is bad for the country. People are dying whilst giving birth. Yet you're looting money that is meant to build those maternity theaters to make sure that our women don't die giving birth. 2,000 women dying every year giving birth is the equivalent of 15 jumbo jets crashing every year and killing pregnant Zimbabwean women.
Sure. That's a terrible state of affairs. Now, Hopewell, you are on record for calling for reforms in Zimbabwe in terms of media freedom. What are these reforms, and do you think your government is open to these reforms?
The most important reform that Zimbabwe needs right now is for the government of Emmerson Mnangagwa to comply with the constitution. We have one of the best constitutions in the world. It only requires the government of Zimbabwe to respect that constitution. When they respect that constitution, it will stop them from looting the central bank. It will stop them from stealing money meant for hospitals, for prisons. I was in prison for 45 days. The prisoners that I was living with, they did not have masks. Yet we're going through a terrible global coronavirus pandemic. People, when they get coronavirus in prison, they're given water because there's no medication. When I was in prison, I went to the prison hospital. They didn't even have paracetamol. They did not have a machine to check my high blood pressure. That's how terrible things are. And so the government needs to respect the constitution and make sure that it's accountable to the citizens who would have voted for it to be in power. But at the moment, it's not happening in Zimbabwe. That's why you find that journalists like myself are thrown into prison for shedding light in the dark corners of what's happening in government.
Now, if you are talking about journalists being imprisoned for speaking truth to power, now, as a seasoned journalist who's worked abroad and also won the coveted CNN Africa Journalist Award and many other accolades, what are the challenges in your view that journalists in Zimbabwe and in the region are facing?
In Zimbabwe, journalists are facing the economic challenge, which every citizen is facing as well. Journalists earn as little as $20 in Zimbabwe. They have to live for little salary to pay their rentals, to send their kids to school, to buy food, and a lot of other things, including healthcare. Now, when journalists are earning that little, what it means is that they can be prone to bribery. They can be prone to corruption because they need to survive. And it also means that the state can abuse the state, the press, the media, because they know that journalists are not earning well. And this comes down to how bad the economy is being run. Everyone in Zimbabwe is suffering. And so it exposes citizens to all manner of things that ordinarily they wouldn't want to be part of. And in the region, the incarceration of journalists, it sends the fear of God in journalists, because you start to worry about what you can report and what you cannot report. And if you are afraid of being thrown into prison, you end up not reporting the things that you're supposed to report on, like corruption. Some newspapers in Zimbabwe did not even report the COVID scandal that was reported by your media house, which looked at how those that were closely linked to the Zimbabwean president ended up being part of that scandal. This is because journalists are bought. This is because journalists are afraid of writing about these things, and it affects how the citizen engages with public officials and public life, and it can only be bad. The press must be able to write and report on things that are happening in that society, because it enables the citizen to hold the public officials to account.
Now, lastly, Hopewell, as a journalist who is being attacked because you are speaking truth to power and you are holding powerful people to account, is all of this worth it, and why is it worth it?
It is indeed worth it, because our role as journalists is to assist society in making the right decisions about public life and public officials. So if I stepped back and I stopped doing my work, it means I'm now allowing public officials to loot money that is meant for the most vulnerable of our citizens, people living in rural Zimbabwe who cannot even afford to buy a set of instruments that are needed if they go to hospital. They can't afford to buy medication. So if we report on these things and we put a light in the dark corners where this corruption is taking place, it helps our country become a better country, and it helps our people to have a better country that can be in a position to provide that which a government is supposed to provide, like healthcare, like clean running water. When I was in prison, we didn't even have running water in prison, we became prone to diseases. So it's important for the media to continue doing this work.
Thank you very much for joining us, Hopewell.
Thank you very much for
Dear invited guest, the Northern SME Expo team is aware of the current restrictions imposed on the country by Honorable President Hage Geingob as from the 12th of August 2020. However, we have developed a system that we can use while adhering to the new regulations. Our team will provide you with a ticket that contains details of the media launch as well as a timestamp at which your presence is required. As per new regulations, only 10 individuals will be present in the media hall as per timestamp indicated on the ticket. Thank you for understanding and for your cooperation. We are excited to see you on Friday. For any queries, please contact Nangula Nashandi on 081 4769 304.
This event is proudly brought to you by Chico Group of Companies.